A new and improved recess tool? Who doesn't like the sound of that?
You can make a chuck dovetail using different tools, as I'll show you in this clip. You can use a bedan. You can use a skew. You can use a commercial dovetail tool. Now I'm going to start with a bedan, and a bedan can work well. We're going to use it in a scraping mode, cutting with a corner, so we're going to have the handle slightly up, and we're going to push back in. I could have used a skew and come in there and do that. But if so, this end would have had to be flat, not round, to get a good clean cut as you work it back. The problem with both of these tools, though, as also is a problem of a store-bought solution, but all of those tools suffer from the same problem, that if you're turning it initially starting between centers, or you, for whatever reason, you've got your tailstock support up, you cannot get in there with these tools because the live center and the tailstock are just in the way. Several years ago, I made this DIY chuck recess tool refurbished from an old Harbor Freight tool I had, and I'll have a complete link to that video at the end of this video. And in addition, I published an article on it in the American Woodturner, and that's on my website. I'll have a link to that under the description as well. So today I'm going to do a remake and make a new and improved version. I want to give thanks to my friend Bert Delisle of Edmonton, Canada, who took my design and made some tweaks to it, which made it a more versatile, stronger tool. And I'm finally getting around to applying those fixes to my original by using a larger blank of steel. The original from my Harbor Freight set is about 12 millimeters wide by 5 millimeters thick, so it's a little thin. I'm going to redo that in one that's almost 3/4 of an inch wide and 1/4 of an inch thick. It's 6 millimeter by 20 millimeter, actually just a hair, I think, bigger than 3/4. And so it's going to be a stronger tool with the better design on the angles and the wider bar stock. It's going to be even more stable on the tool rest with less torque.
Your chuck angles might be different than the 10.5 on my Techna tools. Ideally, you should cut your dovetails to match exactly, but they don't need to be perfect. My tool cuts at about
10 degrees.
Angle. Too steep, like 15 degrees, is worse than one that is angled a bit less than ideal, which would be closer to
10 degrees.
Angle.
Okay, let me show you this in operation. You can see with the tailstock up, I've still got an opportunity to get in sideways. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come into the side, and we're just going to, it's a scraper, just come on back. So let's get to making this thing. I made a paper model and played around with different shapes until I got it the way I wanted. And the improvements that I wanted to make is I wanted more steel here on the tool rest, so that affected this angle a little bit. This cutting edge was 9 millimeter long. I think that's a little long. I'm going to reduce it to 7. 6 might be better. The angle here is the same. It's 10 degree cutting angle right here. Okay, let's look at this design in detail, and let me show you the parts that are critical and the parts that aren't so critical. This angle right here is not critical. This angle here is not critical, but you're going to find that it needs to be more than 90 degrees, somewhere probably 100 to 105. So you've got a clearance to sharpen this bevel angle here. If it's 90 degrees, that becomes a real challenge. The really important angle is this one right here, and that's 80 degrees. That angle, because that is the cutting area that you're going to that's actually going to cut the recess. This is going to be the bottom of the bowl, and that's going to be along the edge of the recess. The other parts that's critical Um, Maybe critical is not quite the right term, but one of the reasons I changed the design is mine was closer to 9 millimeters, and a little less steel would make it a little less aggressive, a little easier to control. So I'd suggest 6 to 7 millimeters on that cutting tip. The other part that's not critical, the thickness of the actual stock. My previous one was 5 millimeters. I would suggest 6 to 8 millimeters is probably gives you a little more stability. The one I'm making is from an 8 millimeter blank, and so I think that's real good. The other thing is the width. I'd say 12 to 20 millimeters. My original was 12. I think the 20 gives it a little more stability across the tool rest here, a little more rigidity. So I think that's probably, I would prefer 20 rather than the 12 that I had before. So next, I've got to take that and I've got to transfer it to this old recess scraper that I used for threading. That before I decided it was too large and I needed this larger blank for this. So I basically just laid those angles out, and I'm going to go over here to my workbench, and I'm going to cut those out with an angle grinder so as to reduce the bulk of the metal, and then I can refine it on a grinder. If you had to cut this thing on your CBN wheel, it could take a while because there's a lot of steel to cut. If you've got a 180 grit wheel as your coarser grit wheel, it is going to take you definitely a long time. So a coarser wheel cuts a little better, but an angle grinder chops this off and gets you started pretty quick. I spared no expense with this cheap Harbor Freight angle grinder, which I've had for several years, and it served me well. So if you don't have one, you might get one if you're going to be making several tools. Then you buy the metal cutting blades, which are very, very cheap. This angle grinder actually, I think, costs about the same price as this bar of steel stock. Wear a full face shield. Don't wear safety glasses. I wound up with a trip to urgent care center because I had a little metal chip fly up, hit my cheek, and bounced underneath into my eye. So spare yourself the aggravation. Well, stuff happens. Okay, I'm going to change the position in here. And I'm only going to cut in 3 millimeters, so. All right, now I can take it over to the bench grinder. The flat surface here, I'm going to do this with 90 degrees. Okay. Now, this front angle, I'm going to set the platform at 70 degrees, 75 degrees. Now I'm going to cut this front. And I'm out of dipping water to cool it down so it doesn't burn my hand. Let me go get some water. don't have to worry about it affecting the temper of the high-speed steel. You just got to keep burning yourself. Hot, hot, hot. I prefer the square wheels to the ones with the rounded edges if you're tool making, because I don't need to do round edges, I need to do flat edges. So I'm going to bring this in and just push it straight back to get that corner in there, and then I can refine it if it's not exactly 90 degrees, but I'm going to, or 80 degrees, so that's what I'm shooting for. Okay, I'm getting it pretty close to shape, and I think it's probably a little deeper than 3 millimeter or 1/8 of an inch. And this corner's round, so I probably will have to bring this back a little bit. Maybe bring this in just a little bit, make sure it's a 7 millimeter. But just got to refine it a little bit.
So here's the earlier version and the newer version, with the biggest difference being the width of the tooth that's cutting on front, and a little wider bar, 20 millimeter versus 12. Here's a view of the bottom that shows the bevel angle, about 75 degrees. And this will go in 1/8 of an inch, and you can see that's 1/8 is how long that tooth is. So it fits. It cuts a perfect recess.
Well, I hope this video is useful to you. If it was, you might be interested in this recent video I did on repurposing tools or a do-over. Or if you're interested in making tools, check out the complete playlist I've got listing all the videos I've done on making tools. If you're a brand new viewer to my channel, I'd be very interested in hearing your comments as to what you got out of this this video. And y'all remember, y'all stay safe and come on back, you hear?